I've got our carburetors just kind of sitting in here on the motor right now. And to reinstall these, we're pretty much just going to do everything in reverse order that we removed it. Now, one thing I am going to do is I'm going to leave the intake manifolds off until I get that air box put back in place. That way, when these carburetors drop down a little bit lower, it makes it a little easier to get the intake runner tubes in here. We'll get them all hooked back up, get all the hoses hooked to the bottom of the air box. Then we'll prop the carburetors back up, reinstall all of the intakes, make sure we've got all of the vacuum lines and all of our drain hoses reconnected properly. We'll reconnect all the cables, make sure they have plenty of slack on them and everything returns correctly. We'll reinstall the ignition coil, and we'll have this thing pretty much wrapped up. Well, I've got the carburetors completely installed now, and I'm going to leave the little chrome covers off. That'll be the last thing I put on after I've checked everything over and actually started and ran this bike for a little bit, make sure I didn't have any leaks or if I need to do any adjustments or anything like that. Also, before I put the fuel tank on here, I'm going to take a few last minutes just to kind of take a little bit of time to look over all these hoses and things, make sure everything's plugged up correctly and is routed correctly, make sure that nothing's in the way of any of the throttle linkage. Make sure your cables have proper slack and they're routed properly. Same thing on the throttle cables. Make sure you got the right amount of free play on them and everything's routed correctly. And then once you're satisfied with all that, I'm going to go ahead and we'll put the fuel tank on there. I'm going to hook up the fuel line. Now, the fuel tank and the petcock on it is actually a vacuum operated. So what I'm going to do, instead of spinning the motor over to apply a vacuum to it, I'm just going to run me a little short line out there with a little hand vacuum pump. Put a little vacuum on the petcock so we can fill the carburetors up, make sure we don't have any leaks or anything anywhere, and then once I'm satisfied everything looks good there, I'll connect the vacuum line to the petcock, we'll add the battery to it, we'll bust it off and see if it'll run. Alrighty guys, well, that's going to about wrap up our 1998 Honda 1500 Valkyrie project. Now after I ran the bike on the bench there for a little while, made sure everything was running pretty good on it, took it out down the road, put a few miles on it, brought it back in, changed all the fluids out. We changed out the engine oil filter, changed out the coolant, also the final drive oil, and I went ahead and flushed out all of the brake fluids, front and rear, and the clutch fluid. So we give it a pretty good working over, put the bike back on the road, and the customers just tickled to death with it. You know, it was a pretty lengthy project. It's probably one of the bigger ones I've done in a while, but to be honest with you, it doesn't quite compare to the time I put those alternators on those Kawasaki 1500 Vulcans. Some of you guys may know about that project I did a few years ago. If not, I'll drop a link down below. You guys can go over and visit that if you'd like. It was a real hoot. It's one of the very first projects here at Day Race Shop. All right. Well, as always, guys, appreciate y'all watching. Y'all have a good one. We'll catch y'all next time around.